Hi. So welcome to this In Conversation with Georgian Ambassador HE Sophie Katsarava. My name's Laura Sainsbury and I'm the Chair of Women in Public Affairs, which is the network for women working in the public affairs industry. A very quick plug from me. Last week we published the results of our 2020 survey. And if you've not had a look already, I urge you all to have a look at the results. They're on our website. They make for some interesting reading. We're delighted to be partnering with PRCA and the PRCA's Emerging Markets Group on what is our first In Conversation with an ambassador. So thank you so much to Ellie and George for reaching out, and of course to Sophie herself. Thank you for your time. Ellie will be leading what I'm sure will be a fascinating discussion, and then there will also be time for questions from the audience. Ellie.
Thank you very much, Laura. It's an honour to have Her Excellency Sophie Katsarava join us for a lunchtime conversation today. Just a quick note about Her Excellency's background. Prior to entering politics, Her Excellency has over a decade's experience working in public affairs and public relations for the British Embassy in Georgia, leading their engagement with the Georgian press and political stakeholders. In 2016, she was awarded an MBE for her work strengthening relations between the UK and Georgia in the education sector. Her Excellency entered the Georgian Parliament in 2016, where she chaired the Foreign Affairs Committee, amongst other roles. And earlier this year, she came to London as the ambassador of Georgia to the UK. As we said, please don't hesitate to ask questions through the Q&A box at the bottom, and we look forward to asking them at the end or as we go through. Your Excellency, thank you so much for joining us today. To kick off, would you be able to give us a quick overview of you, a little bit about Georgia and your role as an ambassador?
Ailey, thank you very much. Laura, thank you very much. Just to check that I am on mute, yes, and you can all of you can hear me well. Well, first of all, of course, big thank you to PRCA's Emerging Markets Group and Women in Public Affairs. This is a fantastic opportunity and a very good platform for me to speak about Georgia and answer any questions that might be of interest to you. I know some of the people attending today's event know Georgia very well, but some do not know and do not know or have been to Georgia at all. So I hope that at the end of this very interesting, I hope, discussion, the ones who have not been to Georgia before, I will be able to convince once borders are open and when the pandemic is over, you will make Georgia, put Georgia on your bucket list. And the ones who can't wait to visit Georgia, certainly, I'm also looking forward that as many of you will visit Georgia. So before we move into the Q&A bit of the event, which is always more dynamic and interesting, I will set the tone and give you a bit of background of what I do and where Georgia stands, and certainly then we will have a more extensive discussion over Q&A session. So I represent my government, the government of Georgia in the UK, which among other things involves key strategic objectives in the UK, such as enhancing cooperation in security and defense, trade and economy. The friendship between our countries is very strong and is as important as ever, I should say. So I will be building on to certainly, and I will working to build on all those achievements so far, to celebrate Georgian culture and traditions in the UK and to raise my country's profile. A key function for every ambassador in any country certainly involves lots of face-to-face meetings or either social media or Zoom, which is inevitable these days, and we can talk about the impact of the pandemic on diplomacy later on. Obviously, a big part of the work is to identify shared interests and common grounds, which is very well established between our countries in terms of our shared values, to, as I said, raise my country's profile and to tell as many people as possible, as many contacts as possible across the board, what Georgia stands for, what we believe in, what our challenges and opportunities are, and what our aspirations are. So and to briefly tell you what our aspirations are, the ones who do not know Georgia well, we aspire to be a member of the European Union and NATO. We aspire to develop the country so that it becomes a full-fledged member of the Western community. We do have challenges, which is security challenges, conventional, as we say, occupation of 20% of Georgian territories, occupation by Russia, and this is a big security threat. Certainly, and this is the area where we work very closely with our strategic allies and partners. One of them is the UK, because we have strategic partnership with the United Kingdom. And security is particularly is the area which unites us. And certainly the opportunities, and we work to identify new opportunities to work together in future. Well, these days, certainly pandemic has put certain things have put into question, such as, for example, how diplomats in the new reality, in the new normal, as is the new term, operate. And me arriving in early April in the UK probably is a very good example to give you my first-hand experience, what sort of impact it has had on the work of a diplomat. But from the very start, I would also like to say that despite lots of challenges, I'm still trying to focus on opportunities and on the positive side of it. And in a way, despite the restrictions, when we talk about face-to-face diplomacy, which is not happening as much as we would like, today's event is a very good example and a demonstration how we can be creative, not to wait for the moment when the pandemic is over, but rather use and explore all opportunities and platforms to get the message across about the country, about my country, and about our shared values and how we can work together in future. So this is again a very good platform, and once again, thank you very much for this. It did have an impact to a certain extent, like with the loss of side events and with the loss of corridor diplomacy, which always has a meaningful impact on our work. But I think what we have on a positive side, what we have managed to do is that we have embraced we have adjusted and we have embraced the flexibility as much as we could through being super creative, or through this through innovative ideas and practices, and we are trying to move on, and we do not stop. We move on in enhancing our cooperation with the United Kingdom, and to identify and create areas where we could work, even even in this challenging and virtual world. So perhaps it would be there is a lot and the wealth of information that I would like to share about, how we see Georgia's future in the Western community, where we stand at the moment. We keep saying, and this is certainly evidenced by facts, that Georgia has never been as close to the West as it is currently, which is a big achievement. And I mean the European Union and NATO and generally our Western partners. And the key to all of that, certainly, and the main priority for my government and every mission that we represent, as we represent our government and mine in this country, is to promote and to help develop Georgia, which I think it has shown quite an impressive path over the years, and to ensure that especially now with the pandemic, how we ensure prosperity of our country. And this is, I think, is a #1 challenge for any country these days, with the impact that the pandemic has caused. So I'm more than happy to expand on every point that I've mentioned through my experience and through lenses of communication, because you would agree that everything that I have mentioned, diplomacy is all about communications, and it requires extensive communication, especially for a small country like Georgia, with its aspirations and a set of ambitious goals. I mean the diplomatic community, we want to get this message across as widely as possible. And I'm very grateful to my British friends who are helping me on that very, important, I should say, path. And many of them I know that attend today's event. Thank you.
There was very many exciting and interesting topics that you touched on in that introduction. If you don't mind, if we go back a little bit, because you sit in you have a very unique career in that not only are you currently representing Georgia in the UK, but you have actually spent over a decade representing or working with the UK in Georgia. How has that experience influenced or shaped the way you view communications, and how does it differ?
Thank you. A very good and interesting question. Well, to start with, I indeed spent many rewarding years working for the British Embassy, for the British government, well, 12 to be precise. And I truly appreciate those years, because I have learned a lot, and I gained lots of experience. And these are not just words that everybody, the words that must say words. It's truly the case. It was many years ago when I joined the British Embassy, and I witnessed firsthand the power of diplomacy and power of communication in international relations and in foreign affairs. And I worked with many ambassadors and a number of ambassadors and many diplomats, British diplomats, and that was a learning path for me. And perhaps subconsciously, even back then, years ago, I made up my mind that, that was very close to me, that was very close to my career. And at the point, I'm still learning a lot, by the way, and I think that's how everybody would feel. That process never stops. But I always knew that the skills that I acquired, I gained through extensive communication and seeing how the British diplomacy operates. That was a big incentive for me and motivation to move on. And when the moment came in my life, in my career, that I had the opportunity to start a new chapter, if you like, from diplomacy to politics, and then back from politics to diplomacy. It was a fantastic experience for me, because in a way, when I moved to politics, and as I was chairing Foreign Affairs Committee, in a way I was my country's ambassador to many countries that I visited over more than 3 years, and I truly had an extensive agenda representing my country and meeting lots of interesting people in different formats, whether it was bilateral, multilateral, and talking about my country. Exactly making those points that I'm speaking today, where Georgia stands and how important it is that the international community unites around the challenges that we face, because this is not a standalone challenge for Georgia, but rather it has got a ripple effect. And where Georgia stands right now, that it needs the support of the international community to continue the development path. And I believe that Georgia is on the right track. and there is a full acknowledgement of it amongst our international partners, as I had lots of opportunities to meet my colleagues from across the many countries and interact with them and make the point. And those were extremely interesting years. But then, you know, the time came when there was yet again new chapter in my life, to move from politics to diplomacy again, but representing my country in the UK, which for obvious reasons is very close to me and to my heart. And for a diplomat, I think is very, it's an added bonus, because for any diplomat, it is very important that they speak the language of the country where they're in. And I certainly do not mean literally speaking the language, to understand their interest. And I think that helps me a lot, all my years that I've spent in the embassy, to understand where the policies of the British government, and how to adjust to make our relations as meaningful as possible.
Thank you very much. I mean, it's certainly a very fortuitous career history that kind of places you in a fantastic position for your current role. I think one of the interesting questions that we've touched upon before is, what preconceptions do people have of Georgia, or if they don't know a lot about Georgia, or a kind of emerging market, a small emerging market in general? And how do you work to tackle that in your communications with stakeholders as you approach them or as they approach you?
Thank you, Ailey. Well, in the first place, the less you know about the country, the more misconceptions there might be around the country. So this is precisely what my role and objective is, to provide my contacts in the UK and to find new circles of contacts who would know about Georgia and know the objective information about Georgia. This is exactly one of the key roles of any ambassador, and my role in this country. So there might be lots of, there are lots of different perceptions that Georgia might, that people might have about Georgia. To start with, my key messages in the UK are that, well, Georgia certainly has got challenges, and this is one of the biggest challenge when we talk about the occupation of 20% of our territories. And UK remains very strong in its support to Georgia's territorial integrity and sovereignty. It's not just the territory, right? We are talking about human beings on the occupied territories, and it is very important that everybody that I meet, politicians, anybody that I meet in this country, understand the real challenge that we are facing, how people suffer on the ground, how families are divided across the occupation line, and that we are talking about human beings. And certainly it entails lots of daily challenges that we have to face on a daily basis. On the other hand, what the government's policy is, through reconciliation, through peaceful policy, we are pursuing the agenda of reconciliation and the development of the country. And this is how we see ultimately that this is the solution to this big security, big challenge. On the other hand, Georgia is developing, and this is not by incident that in my introductory remarks I spoke about about Georgia being on the right track and its Western trajectory, and Georgia standing in the world. Georgia's development is crucially important. Stability in the first place, because we are a stable country, and we are doing everything to contribute to stability in the country, in the entire region, beyond the region. So, and we are fully committed to that, and we will continue that path, because in the first place, this is linked with the prosperity of our country, which ultimately means prosperity of our citizens. So these are all interlinked. And this is what I want to project, that Georgia is a safe country for British investors to invest. This is one of the biggest objectives, to use the opportunity of free trade agreements that we have to enhance economic cooperation and trade cooperation. Georgia is a secure, stable, and safe country for businesses to come and to invest. But it's always important that instead of hearing about Georgia, coming and visiting and seeing yourself what it looks like, it completely changes your perceptions and understanding what we are talking about. That's why tourism is also #1 priority for us. Obviously, we need to go beyond the pandemic, but up until pandemic, the number of tourists were increasing on a yearly basis, ultimately reaching 9 million people, which is amazing, which is great. And the tendency of tourists coming over to Georgia from the United Kingdom was also very positive in terms of increasing, as well as all the soft power, which is equally important for any ambassador to promote Georgian culture, tourism, traditions, and to increase the level of understanding, so that the perceptions are exactly the right. The understanding of Georgia amongst our friends who do not know much about my country or the region are about the right.
I mean, I can back you up and say anyone that hasn't been to Georgia really ought to go to Georgia. Just you know, if you were wondering where your next trip post lockdown ought to be. Just picking up on the stability point that you made. What is very interesting about Georgia it is in such a kind of geopolitically strategic position. And we have a question from the audience from Derek that says that considering Georgia sits at the crossroads between East and West, and of course the former Soviet countries, where does it see opportunities coming from in the near future?
As I mentioned, and thank you for this question, and as I see, and this is certainly this is the position of my government. Georgia, truly, Georgia has got a very important geopolitical location. We appreciate that. Sometimes it's a challenge, sometimes it's not, but in most cases it's an opportunity. But we should not be disregarding the challenge as well. However, we in Georgia try to turn all challenges into opportunities. We want to develop Georgia as a country which is a hub, and to use all the opportunities that free trade agreements offer. You mentioned, and I mentioned, European Union and NATO. And I mentioned that Georgia enjoys free trade agreement with the European Union, and very soon Georgia will enjoy free trade agreement with the United Kingdom. These are the opportunities that I'm trying to promote in this country, to see, to use this opportunity to the maximum extent, because economic links are vitally important to ensure the security of our country, and we do see increasing interest from our partners, from our Western partners, seeing Georgia as a reliable partner. So from our part, we have to, and we have already, but this is again is a process. Which is a never-ending process of development, to demonstrate to our partners that Georgia remains a stable, reliable partner, and the acknowledgement from the other side that Georgia is truly a reliable partner, which is ready to use all the opportunities. And again, I'm going back to free trade opportunities because this is crucially important. Post-pandemic, it will be even more relevant. So that's where we see ourselves in terms of security, which is NATO, European Union, and expanding all possible cooperation with our allies, and the United States certainly being Georgia's #1 ally, and the United Kingdom, of course, where I represent my country.
Hear so much about the kind of strategic direction that Georgia is looking to take in the coming years diplomatically. If we can make just a quick segue over to your role as a woman in politics, that will be actually of interest to a lot of our attendees coming from the Women in Public Affairs background. Often, and also we've got a question on this as well. Often Eastern European politics or politics in the Caucasus is seen as quite male-dominated. How have you found entering politics as a woman, and how is the Georgian government and Georgian parliament moving forward in this regard?
A very topical question, which again, from my perspective, given the political background, I'm always very passionate about that, to be honest, because in one way or another, as you rightly pointed out, politics is mostly male dominated, and it was 2016 when I first entered politics, and a positive sign back then, which continues to be, we are in no way perfect, though, I should say it straight away when it comes to gender equality or gender quotas in the parliament, but the strides that we have made so far, that we are, I should say that we are very proud that for the first time ever, we have a female president elected in 2018. We have many women in leading positions, which is, it's a good example, it's a good sign, it's a good signal. The ministers, with the Minister of Economy, Minister of Infrastructure, Minister of Reconciliation, and politicians. I myself, in 2016, I was chairing the Foreign Affairs Committee, meaning that I as a woman was always very visible, and it's good. There were my colleagues also chairing other committees, female colleagues chairing other committees, again showing the visibility was a very good signal, I hope. Although we're no way complacent what we have achieved. But there has been a recent legislation adopted in the parliament on gender quotas. There is a full acknowledgement and understanding, actually, that women's role in politics and public affairs is very important. There is a lot more debate about it, and this debate is a natural debate. If, for example, years and years ago, that was kind of a, either not that relevant topic or a more taboo topic. For years we have been discussing it, how to improve either the legislation or how to improve the visibility, how to show more examples, and everything that I have listed. It's already the elections and the female president and ministerial posts and influential figures in politics. Female, this all shows, that Georgia takes it seriously, and there is a full acknowledgement. It is important. However, there is a point that I would like to make. What we are talking about is modern politics, modern history, and current politics. However, one point which I keep mentioning to my colleagues in the UK, and we had a big campaign 2 years ago when we celebrated 100th anniversary since the first Republic of Georgia. I don't think that many know that 100 years ago, when we had first Democratic Republic of Georgia, 5 women in Georgian politics were elected in the National Assembly. So that was 100 years ago. And also, in comparison to many European countries who were actually struggling were fighting for the right to vote, Georgia already had 5 women politicians who had prominent place in public affairs and in politics. So the point that I would like to make is that First Democratic Republic of Georgia was short-lived, unfortunately, because of the sad history, and then followed by the Soviet occupation in 1921. But before that, it was a natural process, if you like, natural part of politics, if you like, since we had 5 women in politics 100 years ago. So 100 years later, we do see a lot more women engagement, as long as women do not get discouraged, and they shouldn't get discouraged about either, being active part of the processes. And even if there are moments of doubts, and I'm sure everybody has, well, I had moments of doubts at every stage of my career, we should be confident about the place where we are, and that we will make a difference. And I believe in what I say, and I'm confident about that. And I think that would be one of my messages to women, if you like, that, do what you believe in, be passionate about what you do. This is how I feel. I set bars high, and be dedicated and determined about your job, about what you do generally. That has been my way of working throughout the years.
Well, that's well. Clearly, you've had a very interesting career thus far, and I'm sure it will only continue. But when you did arrive at the UK, though, you were at a natural disadvantage through arriving. I mean, peak lockdown, April, I believe. And how did that perhaps? I mean, there are obviously many disadvantages that came from that, but has it presented any opportunities? Have doors opened more easily, or has there been any way that you have been able to leverage COVID-19 to your advantage as the new ambassador?
Well, exactly. The question that is so topical. It basically, especially in early days of my arrival, it has overwhelmed everybody's agenda, and certainly mine too. It was a challenge, to be perfectly honest with you. A challenge because that was my first few days or few weeks of arrival. And when I was nominated for this job, there were no signs of the pandemic whatsoever. But I arrived in a completely different environment. However, as I said, focusing on challenges, I think is more of an obstacle rather than trying to turn these challenges into opportunities, like Georgia as a whole does, and there's on a personal level too. In my job, I try to focus on where the silver lining is. So there were those silver linings, when I look back on those 8 months, because it's been almost 8 months since my arrival, we have accomplished a lot, along with my team in the embassy, because certainly I can't do on my own, and I do it with my amazing team in the embassy. First, number one priority when I arrived, I remember, was looking after our citizens, Georgians, and that was every country's top priority back then. But on a political front, and on bilateral relations, we moved on as if business as usual. We simply switched to virtual world. We still hosted Wardrobe Strategic Dialogue, which is an annual strategic dialogue, which is the platform for UK and Georgia to discuss all the areas of cooperation. It did happen virtually, but it was successful. Consolidation, international consolidation around the pandemic. UK hosted the big Gavi summit where our Prime Minister took part. We signed a number of memorandum of understanding with London Chamber of Commerce, given that trade and economy is an important, one of the key priorities for us, to promote trade and investment. Established trade hub, virtual trade hub for the first time ever, which never existed in London, and that will promote trade cooperation. Even now, it's working quite well, and I believe that it will be even more. It will keep up the pace once the pandemic is over. So there have been a number of initiatives, ideas, projects, even visits. I visited Bristol, our twin city with Tbilisi, because visits these days are seem a bit, unrealistic. I had a fantastic visit there with the help of the chair of the Twinning Association. I went to Wales to attend a rugby match, which is again an important soft power tool to raise Georgian profile, and this was for the first time ever that Georgia played in the Autumn Nations Cup, which was a big achievement, and Georgia made headlines actually in the British press. So one way or another, there were different challenges. I visited Gibraltar, and we opened the honorary consul's office there. So it was a difficult time, but I tried, as I said, to focus more on the opportunities. But also the good side of it is that, as I said in my opening remarks, it's a steep learning curve. We are learning on the way, and we have to adjust to the new realities. We like it or not, we have to adjust and embrace it fully as much as we can, and be creative. And in a good way, it inspires some creative ideas, which might be quite helpful in future.
I can remember you mentioning that a number of ambassadors had arrived during COVID, and that you all could share tips and pass on, how to engage positively in this time. I guess now you're at the beginning of your role as the ambassador to the UK. What do you have an idea of what you want to achieve within your specific time, and what does success look like to you?
Fantastic question, Ailey. The diplomacy, the work of a diplomat on a daily basis, it's quite intensive. It's quite intensive, and at points it may look, a routine that we operate in that environment. However, everything that I do along with my team in the embassy, which might not have necessarily tangible results today, everything that we do is aimed to contribute to bigger objective. And what is our bigger objective in the UK of our embassy? It is raising Georgia's profile in this country so that we have as many champions of Georgia across the country as possible. Again, as I said, enhancing cooperation in all the areas that we have so far achieved, which are crucially important, vitally important for Georgia and the entire region, I should say, which is security, defense, trade, economy, people-to-people contacts, education, and bringing people together and closer, and to build on the friendship, because we cannot see tangible and feel these results immediately today, but everything that we'll do, it's a build up to a greater idea and a greater project objective. So years later, what I believe is that towards the end of my posting, when I look back, I could say that we achieved, and there will be a long list of achievements, not just signing of memorandum of understanding, which is equally important, but feeling that Georgia's understanding and perception of Georgia has clearly changed, improved, and there are a lot more people in the UK who know about Georgia.
Well, I hope this is one step towards that. I think if anyone on the call is not inspired to either go or invest in Georgia from this, they should definitely attend one of the cultural events or activities that will be going on through the embassy over the coming year or so. I guess as a final question, just as we reach the end of our 45 minutes, what advice can you give young people that are entering communications, are interested in politics, and from your experience and the opportunities as they move forward through their careers?
Well, this is purely my experience. This is purely my feeling and my attitude to everything that I do and every job that I take, whether it's diplomacy, whether it's politics, or again diplomacy, or any other job. Believe in what you do. Be determined about your job. Be consistent what you do, and be passionate what you do. This is, I think, that sums up my way of thinking so far, and not just thinking, but my way of working at every job and working with people. The other day, I came across with Sir Henry Wotton's, a 16th century British diplomat and a politician, quote. He is reputed to have said that an ambassador is an honest man sent to lie abroad for his country. And quite the reverse. I think building trust comes with believing in what you do, whether it's diplomacy or whether it's politics, doesn't matter. And as I said earlier, trust and confidence is very important, but there will be moments when young politicians or young people, young women, if you like, since I'm very keen for more women's participation in political and public affairs, there will be the moments of doubts, but don't doubt yourself as long as you believe in what you do, because that's been my way of thinking throughout the years, and it is now.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real inspiration to hear from you, to hear a little bit more about Georgia, and to hear a bit about your career. And I really hope that many people on this call will have a chance to interact with you in the coming time as your role as ambassador. And we look forward very much to hearing from you in the future. And Thank you very much for joining us once again, and thank you from Women in Public Affairs and Laura and George and I and the PRCA's Emerging Market Group for really inspirational talks. For anyone that has asked a question, that we haven't got round to answering, we will forward them to Sophie and see whether there is that she can pass on a response at some point, and we can also respond separately as well. And thank you very much for joining us, to all the attendees.
Ailey, towards the end, if I've got a couple of minutes, if I may, of course, I look forward to all of you visiting Georgia very soon. And so that you know what Georgia looks like, the ones who haven't been there, it's a very beautiful and a very diverse country. The sea, lush forests, ski resorts, beautiful nature, wine, delicious wine. And the other day I joined a wine tasting event where I described Georgian wine being as colorful as my country. So I want to repeat it here. So there are lots of reasons to visit Georgia, and the warmth and hospitality of people in the first place that make up the whole spirit of Georgia. So thank you very much, Ailey. Thank you everybody who joined our event. I believe we will continue to work in future. Next year, I will be organizing Georgian season in the UK, traveling around and promoting the best of Georgia. So I rely on your support.